So this video is going to be about how to track professional experiences and so this is designed for my professional technical writing course, but it may apply or I may use it in other courses as well, or if you just find it on the internet and it's cool for you, that's awesome. So a lot of times when, especially first year college students are getting into their academic career, thinking about professions, stuff like that, thinking about the job market, most of them have either created a resume for a job, even if it was just McDonald's or something like that, or are in the process of thinking about building a resume as they need to pay bills and they're moving out on their own for the first time, unless they're returning students. And then this may still be applicable because it will give you a new way for thinking about this. So this video, we're going to dig into some of the whys, the why kind of resumes. We're going to tie it to some of the 8 aspects of writing and the writing content. So kind of zoom in or pull it apart a little bit. And then we'll just talk about some real practical things you can do. Without explicitly saying resumes should include this, and this, because there's tons of videos on resumes. There's tons of resources through like Monster and Monster Jobs and Indeed and all that fun stuff. So this is more like how do we take what we're learning in a writing class and the principles that make for good writing and apply them to this professional need and professional environment. So all that to say, let's talk about how and why we track professional experience. So ultimately, if we're thinking what's the rhetorical purpose, we want to, at some point in our lives, and frankly kind of regularly, we're going to need, most people are going to need to communicate their knowledge and experience to others in one way, shape, or form. Whether that's for a job or for some sort of funding or for some sort of special project or for a promotion. A lot of times we need a way to track and communicate experience and knowledge effectively. So traditionally, there are kind of 2 main ways that people, depending on the arena that they're applying for jobs in, would keep track of something like that. The most common way is the resume. I'm sorry, I'm like having issues here today. The most common, most well-known form is a resume. It's like we have to have a way of tracking our education and professional experiences and job duties and roles and all of that, dates of employment, all that fun stuff. And the resume is the most common thing for the average person. There's also something that is often unique to an academic environment or an academic job market called a curriculum vitae. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how it's actually good to have both no matter what environment you're in. Because there are lessons we can learn from the CV as well. And then whichever environment you think you might be in, I'm going to also discuss kind of the importance when we're tracking professional experiences of using also databases and archives. So to break these down, a database stores necessary dates, narratives, job duties, technologies, lessons. You decide what's important in this, but you can keep an ongoing record or archive of important information, even supervisor names if that's necessary or whatnot. But you keep for yourself, for your own records, the information about specialty projects or jobs or whatever that you have. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But a database can be really effective, or having some sort of document that just stores where you just throw all your information. Then we have what's called a CV. A CV, a curriculum vitae or vitae, officially means like course of life. And so it's meant to be a comprehensive document. So it's a very different approach to tracking experiences than a resume. So a CV is comprehensive of your entire career, and usually it's your entire academic career. I know some scholars who are full professors and have nearly 100-page long CV. It's got every speaking engagement they've ever had, every publication, every conference, all their teaching experiences, all their specialty research projects, all of that in one document to be this snapshot of a 20, 30, or 40 year long career. And that actually is a really, really meaningful thing to think about. Both the database and a CV really approach tracking our professional experiences from a longitudinal perspective, or a perspective that looks across time and not just in the moment of what I need. Because getting to resumes, a resume is usually a targeted document for a specific job or specific employer, specific organization. Now, the trouble with that is it really makes us think about our professional experiences and the lessons we've learned and our qualifications in these little snapshot moments where it's really almost putting out fires, kind of that kind of philosophy of solving problems where it's the next deadline or the next thing, and suddenly I need to apply for a new job, so I build a resume really fast, and in that moment I have to cram and go sifting through a bunch of W-2s or Google calendars or you name it, to try and find pay stubs, to try and find what was my actual job title at a company, what were the dates that I worked there, who were my supervisors, what were my duties, and really trying to rack my brain. And sometimes people end up like they haven't done this for 4 years or 6 years or 2 years or 10 years, and then all of a sudden they need a new updated resume. They have to sometimes you have to go figure out where you left the last one or make a new one from scratch. So having this short-term kind of in the moment building of a resume isn't really the best way to keep tracking professional experiences. It's not a healthy process generally to be in the mindset of like, let's just put out fires and fill in the next deadline and all of that. It makes for short-sighted planning and short-sighted solutions to problems or whatever comes up. So I'm advocating for long-term longitudinal thinking when it comes to your professional experiences. People talk about having 5-year goals or 5-year plans. That's great. And if you have a little bit of flexibility in case things change, that's totally fine. But we do want to be thinking long-term because it's a lot easier to say when we're kind of in the trenches, in the thick of a really tough season in life or full of work, it's really easy to give up if we don't have a long-term goal. Sometimes tracking our experiences long-term can be helpful in this way. All that to say, let's talk a little bit more about benefits of databases, CVs versus resumes. To help with this, let's go to a database resource that I created for my students. And let me actually do this so you can still see my face, even though I don't know why you'd want to. It's okay. So I created this form to help my students or anyone who uses it so that whatever experiences they have, they track them, right? Whether they're professional or academic or personal, like you can put in specific projects. You can, even if you're going through a class, if you're taking an English 101 or 102 class, or if you're in some sort of natural science class and you have a lab, these could be meaningful things to put in. And so, what's the project? What was your role in your title? What were the start and end dates? And so if this were actually like, did you work at a place? You could put the project name. You could just put the employer and your title. Like that's an option too. That's how you would spin this. And the start date and end date for the employee. But I wanted this to be flexible enough to account for students who are often full-time professional students, even if they do have jobs. So I want you to be thinking about those little things you do, even if they're in your first year, second year classes. So was this an individual or team project? If you collaborated, how did you do that? Thinking about what was the communication like? What kind of technologies did you use as part of this project? Then provide yourself so that 6 months down the line or 2 years down the line, provide yourself with an abstract or a summary, a detailed description of what the project's purpose and procedures and final results and conclusions were. This way, even if you don't put it into a resume, you have a little blurb about how you spent 2 months of your life 4 years ago. And even if you only look at it just before a job interview, you can draw back on the memories and stay refreshed on, oh yeah, I did do that. If nothing else, it's an encouragement when you're down of like, am I really being productive? It's like, yeah, I have these list of projects, and that was actually really meaningful. I learned some things because sometimes we're so in the thick of it, we don't see how we're growing, right? But if we look back over time, we can go, I remember now. We have to be a little more kind of meta aware of our learning. So give a detailed project overview, reflect, give yourself some personal lessons. And I've built these so that they could be full-fledged paragraphs. Try and use active verbs in specific language. This is for a couple reasons. One, it can make it easier, more vivid memory triggers for you, but also active verbs in specific language means you'll be able to transfer that information at a later date, possibly directly into a targeted resume, even as you build this kind of database of professional experience, this tracking of professional experience. If you also, as kind of a final thing, if it's a research project and you gathered things into a Google folder, if you wrote a research paper and you put it somewhere and you have it on in a file and you want to link that here, you can just include the URL. You can also, if it was a collaborative group project and you all made like a 20 slide Google presentation, include the link here. Those can be really great things to do so that not only do you have a description of your work, the lessons you learned, the technologies you worked with, the specific dates and times and all of that, but you also have links to actual work product, right? Those are like this, and that can all work as data or as evidence that you know and can do certain things. And so you can, when it goes to applying for a job or presenting yourself for a specialty project or whatever it is, you'll have all these materials that you can then these are the deliverables of my life experience, and you won't have to go search 20 different places for them. That's kind of the important thing here. So I'll include with this video the link so that you could copy and create your own version of this. But let me just show you, once you go through this for a particular project, you're going to put it all in, and then you can go into the behind the scenes where you can edit this on your own and look at your responses. Now, I just went in and tossed in a few random things. So I just put test to show that this would work. But one of the cool things about Google Forms that I really like, geeking out about spreadsheets, as I do, is you can click and view these responses in a Google Sheet. Now, as someone who really loves spreadsheets, I know that there are so many other things you can do with spreadsheets. So once you have things in spreadsheet form, just imagine you've been tracking various projects over a period of 2 years, right? Specialty projects or employment, academic and professional experiences. And this thing, say there's 10 rows of data here, right? Well, you can transform that data. You can download this into Excel, into an Excel spreadsheet, and then use something like Mail Merge from Word to create a Word document that has all these things laid out in a format that you like. That may take a special amount of expertise if you don't have that yet. But if you do, it can be a really great way. Otherwise, at least you have all the data here, and if you want, you can just copy paste the cells or the data that matters. You have it all centrally located. You don't have to go searching through W-2s and calendars and things like that to figure out when was it that I did that project. And so this can be a really great way to track your professional experience over a period of time. Again, having a long view, a longitudinal approach to who I am in the process of becoming and how I am developing as a professional. It's cool. So with that, there is a benefit to keeping track of this, like this. But it was doing it the wrong way that kind of led me to go, maybe this will benefit students or whoever sees this video. And so, or having this longitudinal thing. And, it was one of those things where I had decided to apply for a job, or a specialty project. And I had, it was just last minute, like, oh, this might be a good idea. And so I did. And I hadn't updated my CV in a couple years. And in the process of this, I was also asked to build a portfolio, which I had some things with, but I ended up having to search all through my different Google Drives to try and pull these things together. And it was a really meaningful experience to remind myself what I had done, but it was also really frustrating. And, and even the job I have now, asks me to, on a yearly basis, like update them on the projects I did that year. What was professional development? What specialty teaching things? What service to the college that I work at? What committees did I serve on? And they ask for specific dates and things like that. So having this kind of information is really helpful and beneficial. So all that to say, I'll show you how this kind of plays out in a CV way. So we have these 3 ways. We have a database option like you see here, and how that in raw data form is still better to have it all centrally located than not. Then we could just have a running document that we keep adding stuff to, and that's really closer to a CV. You still, and so I'll show you mine, my current draft of a CV. And so, the first page I try and make it look a little bit like a resume ish. I have a little bit of summary, and I've changed it a little bit more recently, but I used to have my research interests on the first page and a summary of my my administrative positions. Like some of this I tried to get up into the first page, that kind of thing. But right now I've got all my basic professional information. I've got my educational experiences and contact information, my publications, since I am an academic, that's important. I do have a summary of academic positions, and then I expand on them later. So I tried to create that first page to be a quick print, short form resume with my most recent publications and that kind of stuff. That being said, this is the last 10 years of my professional life. Awards, presentations, conferences, research projects, descriptions, even teaching experience, because the job I currently have is a primarily teaching position at a community college. So when I went to get hired here, they wanted the total list, like for me to get paid as much as possible. I had to give them a list of exactly how many sections of classes I had taught, and so I've just kind of kept the habit of keeping the tally each semester or each year. Once a year I'll update this, so that's kind of fun. And then I have these other experiences too. So I not only for my own records I keep that so that if I want to ask for a raise, like if I get to a new scale, it doesn't matter. You don't need to know that. But I also keep track of what type, was it online? Was it hybrid? Was it a specialty type of course? My developmental classes. Also, was it one of my learning communities? Because I do these mashup courses. So I've got one with Intro to Computers. And so I gave myself a little blurb. I do the same thing with my chemistry and my math learning communities and my Intro to Business communities. I made sure to leave notes in my CV, because again, this is the entire course of life. So 5 years from now, I may not be able to fully describe how I tried to approach, my, in this case, like this was 2017, so it has been 5 years. I may not be great at describing exactly what that learning community was supposed to look like and what me and the other teacher did to merge values. So having that in my CV, it's there and it's a quick reminder, oh yeah, we did do that. And then suddenly I have this flood of memories and the students from the class and all that fun stuff. But yeah, so I have all of my teaching experiences, all the other random things that I've done, tutoring. I've got all my different research projects and whatnot. And I have all my list of technologies that I'm good with, including some of my stuff from way back, like 20 years ago when I did theater performance and production. And so I've got my soundboard mixing and my light board set up and stuff like that. And then at one point in time, there was a position that had to do with maker spaces. So I decided, since I do have a construction background, to put some of those kind of specialty, more personalized skill sets and interest onto my CV, which is not as common, but I'm good. I've got certain hand tools and costuming and prop making and as well from theater. And then I also know how to do things like arc welding, and I'm just a weirdo. That's just how it goes. Like all these weird things, set painting, like just this stuff. And then of course, if you're watching this on YouTube, you know all the YouTube stuff. So I have close to 90 YouTube videos. I decided to include the links and the watch times and the views for each of the videos, at least at one point in time. I think updated April 2022, if I gave my notes correctly. That's an example. This video is getting long, but I'm really trying to show you there can be a benefit to keep having a CV mindset, even if you're in the professional world. What I do have now is a good summary of all the experiences since I entered the master's program in 2012, and maybe a little bit before, that now I can draw back on. And if I wanted to then make a resume, which, as we said, was a targeted, a targeted document for a specific job and specific employer. If I had a specialty project, I can go in and say, look, I can go copy paste and pull snippets of those different very specific projects or very specific skills and just slide them into and create this targeted document. And that's because I've had the long view, I already have all that built, and building a resume in the moment doesn't feel like this intense workload, put out a fire, just I got to get something produced quickly. It's like, oh no, I can take my time. I can just it's selecting, and it's so if you're aware of my 8 aspects of writing approach, the database approach is how I'm storing information over time. It's kind of the scientific aspect. I'm data gathering. The CV approach is more analytical and scientific, where I'm putting information in. I'm also providing myself with mini commentaries along the way. And then the resume portion is more rhetorically oriented, where I'm purposefully targeting my message where I selectively choose evidence from my vast experience, depending on who you compare it to, or not so much, and create that resume. So nobody enjoys throwing together a resume, and in the moment, that's often not a good decision-making process anyways, right? But if you have established practices of regularly or periodically downloading, like once a semester or once every quarter of a year, every couple months, you go in and you check, you put in you track those professional experiences, that can be really good. That way, when you kind of get into the moment, you've got it all there. Now, there's one other side of this I'll add, since this video I've decided apparently to be comprehensive as best I can. The other part of this is it's really common for people to create their own portfolios of work, whether that's professional or teaching or whatever. And there was a time when I had to build a teaching portfolio in 4 days or less. And I do a lot with teaching. Most of my publications are pedagogically oriented because that's what I care about. It's my research interest and all that fun stuff, aside, on top of writing and language and whatnot. So I built a teaching portfolio. It's got, a main homepage where it's like, here are the highlights. If you want to jump to my course materials, you can. I included the section on teaching experience directly from my CV. At least I had that pre-built. Then I highlight some service learning. I highlight and link out to specific publications I have, or where they've been highlighted, or student testimonials, because that seemed like a good thing to do at the time, or my YouTube channel, like those big things. And then I have my full teaching philosophy, or and a little excerpt, because lately people have been asking for diversity statements. I also have put in basically every course evaluation from the last 4 or 5 years. I'm pretty sure I go back to at least 2018. So, and include my student evals too. I've got all my reflections for each of those semesters, and I have all of my course materials roughed in, kind of representatively for my core ways of teaching either first year writing or some of the graduate courses, or teaching technical writing or professional design courses, kind of prototype courses, because we have English 111 at my institution, but I borrowed from another one's course descriptions and kind of did some things on how I would approach it. And then I've got my TESOL methods course I taught for ASU, and my academic writing for international graduate students that I taught for ASU. So I've got some of those all there. Now, that's just, again, this is academic specific. You wouldn't need to do that. You use these things as inspiration for whatever yours is. I will say I built this in Google Sites. It was really easy to plug and play, especially if I had all those files already in a folder in my Google Drive. It made it really easy to slide over. So all that to say, track your professional experiences. Make it have a longitudinal approach where it becomes a regular, periodic thing that you do, and to archive or keep track, to enter data on the projects you're doing on a regular basis. That way, you're never having to throw something together. You just have it prepared. If an opportunity shows up and maybe the deadline's tomorrow, you don't have to stay up all night, which if you've seen my videos on writing process, so I don't like when we do that. I don't like when I do that. I'm at a point where I only sleep 5 hours or 6 hours a night anyways. I want it to be good sleep. So, all that to say, we want to track our professional experiences, and we want to have longitudinal views, and really the resume is something that is targeted and temporary. But if we keep an ongoing database, and we have kind of a CV that's comprehensive and it's moderately well formatted, it's not that hard then to quickly build a resume in the moment as needed, right? And also, it's a great way to have these memory triggers of like, where was I 10 years ago? What research was I doing 10 years ago? Because it's always, it's funny when we write something and then, for me, a couple of the publications I have were based on research done 5 years before they were published, just because that's how the academic cycle goes, right? The publication cycle goes. So all that to say, track your professional experiences. And if you're watching this as part of a class, I did create this for a technical writing class, but again, I may give this to you as an option to help you develop professionally, even as a first-year writing student. So be thinking about these principles, and if I've given you an assignment connected to this video, make sure and read the directions of the assignment, because you may have specific things to follow or specific tasks to help you get in the habit of thinking longitudinally about your own experiences and recording how awesome you are over time.